Hello, I'm Helen Bradley. Welcome to this video tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to have some fun with layers and masks in Photoshop Elements. To start out with learning about layers and masks in Photoshop Elements, we're going to apply a spot color effect to this photo. What that is we're going to create the photo as black and white and then see through certain areas of the black and white to see the color underneath. To do this, first off, we need to make a duplicate of this background layer, which I can do by right-clicking on this layer and choose Duplicate Layer. And I'm just going to click OK when that dialog appears, and that gives me two identical layers. You can achieve the same result by choosing Layer, Duplicate Layer. We want to make this a black and white layer, so with it selected, I'm going to choose Enhance and then Convert to Black and White. And I'm going to choose a good black and white conversion. I think today I'm going to choose Scenic Landscape, and I'll just click OK. Now we need to see through this image layer to the layer below, the one that has the color on it. So we're going to add a layer mask. I'm going to click here on the topmost black and white layer and click Add Layer Mask. And this applies a white filled layer mask to the image. You can see that nothing's changed in the image as a result of doing this, and we don't expect it to have changed. White layer masks just simply show you the contents of the current layer. But I have black selected here as my paint color. I'm going to click on a brush. I'm just going to display my tool options because I've got them on auto hide. Just make sure I have a nice soft brush. Let's hide those back again. I'm making sure I'm painting on the mask layer, and I'm just going to resize my brush on the fly by clicking the open and close square bracket keys, and I'm just going to paint over the area of this star. So let's just make the brush a little bit bigger and let's paint over the star so we can see it now in blue. And now let's go and pick up the orange of the child's t-shirt. And then he has some wonderful green boots, so let's go and grab those. Now I'm doing this a little bit roughly. You'll be a little bit more careful than this. But I just want to show you how the effect is achieved. In wedding photography, this is often used with a black and white image of the bride and where her bouquet, for example, is rendered in color. Now, if you go too far with this effect and you need to get it back, then just switch colors back to white. And now you can see I've got a little bit of color in here. I'm just going to paint over that on the mask here with my white brush, and that just gets back the black and white effect. So that's one way that you can use the masks and layers feature in Photoshop Elements to create an interesting effect for your photos. Now let's look at something else. I think we'll go to this house here. What I want to do with this house is I've done a lot of cleaning up to get rid of a lot of things that were on this house in terms of wires and poles and things, but I want to replace the sky. And I'm thinking that this image has a sky that I can borrow. So I'm going to select the rectangular marquee tool here and just grab a slice of sky. So this is the piece that I want, so I'm going to choose Image, Crop. That just gets rid of the rest of the image, leaving me with the sky. Now I don't want these pieces, but I think that they're going to be hidden behind the house, so I don't really need to get rid of them. If I did need to get rid of them to get a bigger piece of sky, then I would simply use the clone stamp tool. I'd Alt or Option click here and then just paint out the flag. But I don't want to crop my sky too much because it was a pretty good piece of sky, and so I want a fair bit of sky for my house. So having got that sky, I'm now going to choose Select All and then Edit Copy. Let's go to the house image and let's choose Edit Paste. Well, our sky is tiny and our house is really big, but it doesn't matter too much. It would be better if it were a larger piece of sky, but it's going to work perfectly. I'm just going to make it big enough to fit over the existing sky, and I'm going to click the check mark here. You can see here there's the original house and its sky, and you can see that my piece of sky is fitting perfectly over the top. It's just that right now it doesn't look like a really good replacement job. It's just a bit obvious, I think. What we need to do now is to move the sky below the house. Now, we can't move the house right now because as much as I pull this layer, it won't move. The reason why it won't move is it's called a background layer, and every photograph that you open has a background layer, and one of the rules about background layers is that you can't move them. You can't take them anywhere. Another one of the rules about them is that you can't erase to transparent on a background layer. So let me just show you what I mean. I've got the eraser tool here and I've got blue as my background color, and see what happens when I try to erase on this layer. What I'm doing is I'm effectively just painting with blue because you can't make a hole in this layer. But let's see what happens when I try to erase off this layer here. Well, when I erase off it, you can see it has a very different effect. I'm erasing to transparent. So there's a couple of things about a background layer. You can't move it and you can't erase to transparency from it. So all of that begs the questions, how do you stop a background layer from being a background layer? Well, that's very easy. You can just double click on it and click OK. And then it automatically becomes just a regular layer. And when it's a regular layer, it does all those things that regular layers do, like moving. So now I've put the house on top of the sky. Well, we're halfway to our solution. It's just that we need to poke a hole in the sky so that we can see this better sky underneath. Well, we do that with a mask. We're going to click always on the top of these two layers and we're going to click Add Layer Mask. And then we're going to make a selection of the sky. We could just paint over the sky with black. Let's just go and get black. I've got my mask selected. I've got a nice big brush and I could just paint over the sky here, but I'm going to get into a bit of trouble when I get around the edges of the house, and I think I could do a quicker job. And the quicker job is done with the quick selection tool. There's three tools in this area of the toolbar. There's the magic wand, the quick selection tool, and the selection brush, and it's the quick selection tool that we want. So I'm just going to click on it. Let's hide these tools away. And I'm going to make sure that I have the house selected here, not the mask. I want the house layer. I'm just going to drag over the sky. And you can see that Photoshop Elements has made a pretty good job of selecting things, except this chimney. It's gone and lopped the top of the chimney off. Well, that's easy enough for me to fix by holding the Alt or Option key and just drawing over the little piece that I want Photoshop Elements to have another look at and bring back out of my selection, not including it in the selection. So now I have the sky selected. The brush tool is going to work a little bit differently. When you have a selection in place, when you paint using the brush tool, let's just undo that because that wasn't very good. Let's just click on the mask first and start painting with the brush tool. You can see that I can paint along the very edges of this selection and I'm not going over the house, because when you have a selection, the brush is limited to the area that is defined by that selection. So I can't paint outside this border. So that makes the brush tool an option, but so too is the paint bucket tool. I've got black as my foreground color. I've clicked on my paint bucket tool, so I'm just going to click here to dump paint into this area. Now I need to just fix up around where I had a partially transparent brush edge. But now that I've got my paint in place, my black paint on my mask, you can see that we're seeing through now to the layer underneath. I'm going to press Control or Command D to deselect my selection so that we can see the resulting repair job. We've been able to put a new sky into this image. Now it's not the world's most perfect sky, but it's certainly better than we had before. If I were looking to improve this, what I would do is add a new layer. I'm just going to drag it beneath the entire image and I'm going to fill it with white. White is my foreground color. I'm just going to grab the paint bucket tool and just dump white paint into it. And what I'll do with this layer is I'm just going to lower its opacity. So I'm going to make it a little bit see-through, and what we're seeing through this layer too is a white layer underneath. So we're just lightening this effect, so we're not getting quite so blue a sky, but we've certainly got a much better sky than what we started off with, because this is the original sky in our image, and we've got a heap better sky now through making these fixes to our image. The final thing we're going to do with layers and masks is actually put two images together. I have this image here and I've got an image of a bird. We're going to grab the bird by choosing Select All and then Edit Copy. And then we're going to this image and we're just going to choose Edit Paste. I've got the selection tool selected, so I'm just going to move the bird into position, and if I want him to be a bit larger, I'm just going to drag on the corner handle and just make him a little bit larger. Now, to blend him into the layer below, all we need to do is to click on his layer and add a layer mask to his layer. And again, because the layer mask is white, we're seeing everything on this layer, but we can paint with black to blend the two images together. I'm going to click on the paintbrush tool. I've got black as my paint. I've got quite a large brush and I can enlarge it by pressing the square bracket key. I'm making sure that I'm painting on the mask, and I'm just going to start painting around to blend these two images together. The first thing to do always is to blend in the edges because you don't want them to look obvious. Now I'm going to start bringing in some of the detail from the layer below by just painting out the bird layer. Now, I don't want it to be fully transparent or fully opaque when I get closer to the bird, so I'm going to start working with a different color. I'm going to start working with a light gray. I can paint on a mask with any shade of gray, from light gray all the way through to dark gray, so I want it to be a little bit lighter, which is going to show me most of the bird layer but not all of it. Again, I'm going to wind my brush up a little bit and start painting out, and you can see now that the painting effect is much softer. We've got sort of a mix of the bird layer and the machinery layer below. And as I continue to work, I can change the color. I can make it a little bit darker. The darker the paint that I'm painting with, the more of the bird layer that's going to disappear and the more I'm going to see of the layer below. I am, however, going to want to make it very dark around the very top edge here where the bird image finishes, because it's got a really sharp edge. I want to make sure that I protect that so you don't see that in the final image, because that's a bit of a giveaway that we've got a blend happening there. So let's just make this brush a little bit bigger. You can see I can be a bit selective about what areas of the image underneath that I want to see and what I want to see of the bird layer on top. And this is how we would create a quite complex collage, by just blending images together and choosing the amount of the blend by blending with different shades of black and grey and white. So there's an effect that you can create yourself with a couple of images of your choosing, just making sure that if you want to see through the top layer, you paint in black on the mask for the top layer. If you want to see partially through the layer, then you paint with a shade of grey. But wherever you want the top layer to be 100% visible, then make sure that the mask is white in that area. I'm Helen Bradley. Thank you for joining me for this video tutorial. Look out for more video tutorials here on my YouTube channel, and consider subscribing to my channel and you'll be alerted when new videos are released. And visit my website at projectwoman.com, where you'll find more tips, tricks and tutorials on a range of applications including Photoshop, Lightroom, Illustrator and a whole lot more.